Hi, I'm David Partika, and I created CSS Burner as a rapid optimization tool for CSS. Today, I'd like to show you how to use, to your advantage, a new function that I've added within the statistical analysis menu, which is here on the top. And this is a type selector option, which when we select a frequency distribution, I've just added this type selectors. And a type selector is just an element that we would see within an HTML tag. For example, an anchor element is inside the tag. It's just an A, or a div is just a div. Those are type selectors when we see them in a selector. Now, these type selectors can manifest in a variety of ways. They could just be solitary, or sometimes they can be before an ID or a class selector. So for example, if you have a div with an ID of whatever, it's a div is the name of is the ID. So you can either have in your style sheet hashtag div, or you could have div hashtag div. So the type selector prepends in that case. And this is something that we do want to keep track of as far as decreasing the bandwidth of our style sheet. And I'll show you why in a moment. So I already have a style sheet that is pasted into the text area. It's 650,000 bytes roughly. And let's count the number of occurrences of type selectors. And let's analyze this. Okay, within a fraction of a second, we see that there are a variety of type selectors used here. Now you're not going to capture, because the bar graph only has so much room, you're not going to see all of them, but so I've capped the maximum at 8. But in this style sheet, we see almost 800 occurrences of anchor. That's by far the most. And the range is to, let's see, 84 occurrences of the use of the type selector I, which is for an italics tag. And we see that there are 84 occurrences. And what I find is useful for this function is the following. Now, we know that CSS Burner is about trimming the fat off of our style sheets. And I've noticed in my own style sheet writing that sometimes, maybe just out of negligence, I will prepend, a class or an ID selector with the actual type. So let's say if it's an input type equals checked, I will write my selector as input type equals checked, but really the only element that can be checked is an input. So you really didn't need to include the input there. But let's say that you have an ID selector. Let's say, like I was saying at the beginning, let's say that your ID has some name, and you prepend the hashtag with the type selector. So instead of writing hashtag ID, you write, say, div hashtag ID. That's unnecessary bandwidth. And what I wanted to do with this was I wanted to give the authors a sense for how often they use these type selectors, and just so that if there is an inordinate number of these type selectors in the style sheet, they might want to just check and see if any of these are simply prepending a simple selector. So like I said before, input brackets type equals check, or div hashtag ID name. And you don't need those because an ID should be unique, and an input is the only type of element that can be checked. Well, an option can too, but typically it's going to be an input. So this was the hope. for the use of the type selector, and maybe just to give you just a little added nugget of insight into your style sheet, and maybe if there's any of these type selectors that you can trim out of your style sheet, or to give you a sense for how you write your selectors. Maybe you write your selectors, your compound and your complex selectors using these types. So you might do something like, class name plus div, or you might do something like with a general sibling selector. You might do something like input general sibling label. So it's just another piece of information, and I hope you found this useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have not subscribed to the Optimized CSS channel already, please do so, and look for some more of these helpful videos in the near future.